Okay, Brian. Good evening and welcome to tonight's Homewood City Council meeting, June 8, 2020. We're going to begin with a call to order, and we will start with an invocation by Councilor Mike Higginbotham, followed by our pledge. Everyone please rise.
May we pray. Most merciful and loving God, as we gather here tonight, we come to you at a time that we know our nation is in pain. Our community is in pain, and our neighbors are in pain. Our burden as a people is great, and the long road to justice is not entirely clear. I'm reminded as we gather here tonight that you tell us in the book of James that faith without works is dead. We ask for your wisdom, Lord, because we know too that words without action are hollow and meaningless. Lead us and task our hearts with the work that must be done. As we take up the business of the city this evening, give us your discerning spirit so that we may make decisions that are worthy of our citizens. We ask you tonight that you would walk in front of us to guide our steps, walk beside us to steady our hearts, and walk behind us to watch over our path. And all the people said, Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. We'll begin tonight's meeting. Let me just say we are still going to exercise social distancing rules. Encourage the use of masks for those who want to. It is optional. Some of us will, some of us won't. I may go to and fro with it tonight. Just want to let everybody know that so that we are spread out and we'll continue to exercise those practices. All right, so with that said, we'll begin with roll call vote. Melody.
Mr. Gwaltney?
Here.
Mr. Thames?
Here.
Mr. Higginbotham?
Here.
Mr. Wolverton?
Here.
Mr. McCluskey?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Smith? Here. Mr. Wyatt?
Here.
Mrs. Andress? Here. Mr. Hardin?
Here.
And Mr. Wright?
Here.
Everybody's present.
Thank you, Melody. And also to let everyone know, we are also running this meeting by Zoom, open to the public, and I think we got all our council members present, but I think the mayor is going to be joining us by Zoom as well. So just to let everyone know, and we will attempt to have appropriate Zoom participation where it is appropriate. All right, so with that, first item, I will entertain a motion to dispense and to approve the reading of the minutes from May 18, 2020.
So moved.
By
Second.
Mr. Gwaltney. Second by Mrs. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the May 18, 2020 meeting stand approved. We have a few board vacancy issues. First, we're going to reopen the BZA position. We had one that was open, and I believe we had one application, which is all we needed, but it came one day late. And just to handle that appropriately, we're going to reopen that BZA position until June 22, and certainly will accept the application that we have, and we will see if there are any others by our next meeting, and if not, then we'll be in a position to approve that one candidate, I suppose.
And that's an at-large position.
I'm sorry, that large, I'm sorry. We also have Historic Preservation Commission appointment for Ward 4. And I believe Mrs. Councilor Smith is going to help us with that one. Mrs. Smith?
Yes, we had one applicant, Dr. Allison Litton, and I would like to move tonight to appoint her to the Ward 4 spot on the Homewood Historic Preservation Commission.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve Allison Litton as the new Ward 4 representative of the Historic Preservation Commission. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so Ms. Litton, congratulations, and Melody, if you'll let her know, or Barry can do the same. We have one other item for Ward 1 Historic Preservation Commission position. We need to open. As I understand, we have a member that is, whose term is expiring and is not choosing to continue. So we do need to open that up. And frankly, I don't know, you Ward 1 guys, how long, you want to just open it up till July 13, July 27? Historic Preservation?
It's already been open for, didn't we, it was open, and it was the same as the Ward 4, it was open until June 1st.
We reappointed the incumbent, right?
Well, no, we didn't ever reappoint her. She had intimated that she did want to remain on the commission and then changed her mind because of some family circumstances, which are completely understandable. So we just really need to reopen it. I mean, unless y'all want to leave it open for that long, if y'all think it's necessary to leave it open that long.
We could reopen it until June 22. Do we have any, will that give enough time to get some applicants? I think is the question. June 22? Fine. All right, so we'll open that one up till June 22 as well. Melody?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we do have a few additions to the agenda tonight. And first of all, I have 3 items because they're public hearing matters. We're going to do committee referral and other new business because I'm going to need to set those for public hearing. And those 3 items for both of those agendas are going to be first item 120620, which is a request to set a public hearing and referral to the Special Issues Committee for permission to install front yard fence at 918 Salter Road, coming to us from David Hanson and Wyatt Pugh. That will be scheduled to be assigned to the Special Issues Committee. Next, we have item 130620, which is a request to set a public hearing and referral to the Special Issues Committee for consideration of a variance to a 15-foot setback requirement for a fence in the second front yard at 1114 Columbiana Road, coming to us from the Delk family and Mr. Pugh. And we also have item 140620, which is a request to set a public hearing and referral to the Special Issues Committee for consideration of a variance to the sign ordinance excuse me, at 136 Green Springs Highway. This one coming to us from Sarah Peters and Greg Cobb. And the last amendment to the agenda is going to just other new business agenda is item 150620, which is a request for consideration of an ABC retail beer and retail table wine license for Dimitri's Barbecue, doing business as Dimitri's Barbecue, located right across the street from City Hall here. That coming to us from our city clerk. And that again is for our amended agenda. And for those 4 items, I will entertain a motion for approval of the agenda as amended.
So moved.
By Mr. Higginbotham, second by somebody. Second by Mr. Wolverton. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so the agenda is approved as amended. We do not have any consent agenda items for tonight, so we'll go straight into our old business agenda. First item 070520, which is a public hearing for tonight for consideration of property at 720 Shades Creek Parkway for a rezone from I-2 Institutional District to C1 Office Building District. The applicant is Shoal Engineering Company and Shades Valley Evangelical Lutheran Church, all for the purpose to rezone the eastern portion of this property, approximately 1.289 acres. This came through the Planning Commission with a favorable 7-0 vote. And we will begin with this item with a report from P&D.
Yes, sir. The committee met on May 5th and voted 5-0 to send this item out without recommendation pending this evening's public hearing.
All right, thank you, sir. So we'll first we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing on this tonight. And I see we have our applicant before us, so we'll begin certainly with our applicant to speak on this item. I assume in favor of it, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am not Mr. Scholl. I am David Silverstein. Pleasure to be with you. I am president of the Five Stone Group. With me tonight, also members of the Five Stone, is David Silverstein Jr. and Michael Riley. Our architect for this project is Gray Plosser of the KPS Group, and Gray is here, along with Taylor Scholl, who is our, Scholl Engineering is our civil engineer for the project.
Okay.
So
Apologize for that.
I'm sorry?
So apologize for
No, that's
that.
okay. Technically, Scholl is the applicant, but also here tonight on behalf of the church is Pastor Eric Murray, who's in the back, and a member of the church, Paul Shabacker, is also here. We began having discussions with the church well over a year ago to look at their property and determine if there is a way to perhaps monetize a portion of the site, the eastern portion of the site. Do we have, I think we have some, yeah. The church loves being at this location, loves being in Homewood, has been here for many, many years, and plans to continue to stay there. But in an effort to try to stimulate perhaps some income for the church over time, they would like to look at have approached us to look at what's the possibility of perhaps developing the eastern portion of the site, which you see outlined up on the screen. Certainly there is a limited number of uses that would be suitable to go on that site. And what we have developed a plan for is a boutique office building of approximately 25,000 square feet that I believe would fit nicely on the site. It's 2 stories with 1 level of parking underneath and 2 stories above the parking. Our goal and objective is to design and build a Class A office building, very much in keeping with the other, Class A buildings that are on that corner. Fairway has a lovely building. Center State Bank is above at what used to be called the Lucky Building. So we've been working on a design for such a project. The church does not want to sell the site. They would like to enter into a long-term ground lease for it, and so we would be entering into a 99-year ground lease for the site. The church, as I said, would love to stay there, so our proposal is to leave the zoning in place for the church's facility, and where the portion of the site where the office building will be located, we're proposing to zone C1, which would permit this type of use on the site. We've had good meetings with your planning department. I've been told that such a development on this portion of the site is certainly in keeping with the master plan for the city for this piece of property right here. It's a fabulous intersection there at the Parkway, Shades Creek Parkway, where the drive comes down, fully signalized. You can go east-west on Shades Creek, or you can go in any direction on 280. So from a development, been in the business a long time, you die for one of these types of, that's the wrong use of that term. You would love to have such a signalized intersection at the front door of your development. So the signalized intersection is terrific here. We think it's a premier location. The market for such a building, office building in this area, is quite strong, and so we think we will be successful in putting in there the types of office users that would certainly have the ability to pay the rental rates that will need to be charged for a new building like this. Met early on with Council President and Jennifer at the coffee shop to say, here's our thoughts, here's how we'd like to proceed. How would you go about it? And so with Jennifer's guidance, we began to, we've had a meeting with the neighborhoods, the surrounding neighbors that live adjacent to the site. Pastor Murray was kind enough to host a gathering at the church right before the COVID crisis hit. And we had 10 or 12 residents that live in close proximity come. We explained the development plan to them, and I think it was well received. I guess the fact that no one's here to object is a pretty good indication that they are, well, I don't know. There may be somebody back there to object, so I don't want to be premature. But the meeting went quite well, and so we've had a good meeting with the neighbors. At the last work session that we're here, I think a week or so ago, I pointed out to you that we were in the midst of discussions with Center State regarding some overflow parking issues for the church parking lots that are just to the north of the site. Those conversations have led to us reaching an agreement with the bank over some overflow parking issues. So I think John Bragg is here for the bank in case he would like to speak to that, but I believe we have reached an agreement with the bank, which was the issue here last time I came before you. I'm going to stop and let you ask some questions because we had a little bit of a question and answer session last time. So if there's any questions you'd like to pose to me, I'd be glad to.
Council, while Mr. Silverstein's up here at the podium, certainly we'll open it for other people to speak in favor or against this item, but anyone have any questions for Mr. Silverstein while he is up here at the podium?
I did have something I wanted to read in to the record from a resident that wasn't able to be here tonight.
Okay.
But I did want to read this directly from him. A resident named John Dorland emailed me today, and I've been very communicative with the board. Councilor Hardin and I both have, as far as letting them know, giving the opportunity to come up here last week for the Planning Development Committee, the Planning Commission public hearing, and this public hearing as well. And I will reiterate that it definitely was a very positive meeting with the church. I did want to read this one from one of our residents that I received today. He wanted to say that he would love for you to try to save some of the larger trees on site. He thinks it would add to the aesthetics of the property and give it a unique quality rarely seen with new construction today. And some of the trees would also be a buffer from the noise on Highway 280. So I just wanted to put those into the record and support those
Right.
comments as well.
Right. Well, I would say to you, it is absolutely our desire from a landscaping standpoint to preserve as much of the, there's one really lovely magnolia tree right there at the front, and I've asked Gray to make sure that maybe we can save that. So, look, I think, from my perspective, what really makes a project not only is the easy part is designing a nice-looking building, and also for us, having beautiful landscaping is also an important aspect of really all of our developments that I've had the pleasure of working on over the years. So I have absolutely no problem with doing the best we can on the landscaping.
I will tell you, as someone who lives in his world, it's a tough site, and they're going to have to do a lot of grading, and that means trees will be taken just because you've got no choice. I mean, so don't expect that every tree is going to be able to stay there. I mean,
Well, I'm looking at it.
It's going up a hill.
It's kind of hard to avoid a tree issue when you look at the
it's
diagonal.
just tough.
So it's like a mini forest off of Shades Creek Parkway there, but I understand. And so a lot of grading and a lot of interest, a lot of desire to save some of those trees. I mean, and I can see why. All right, any other questions from Silverstein? Ms. Wolverton?
Just a quick question. I guess it's just to piggyback off of the discussion we're having, but in discussions with the city, the BZ department, did they mention how you might remediate some of the trees, or was that something that was discussed?
We had preliminary discussions. Our commitment has been and continues to be, as I say to you tonight, as we locate the building and as we do our grading, to the extent we can, we are certainly going to preserve what we can. And then obviously, we'll have to replant and design a beautiful landscaping plan for the project. It has such great visibility from Shades Creek Parkway. To do something short of what we A, are obligated to do, and B, what we should do would be a missed opportunity.
And I guess I just wanted to further clarify, so we are talking about subdividing in order to rezone part of it, correct? So I didn't know if that applied to the property in its entirety, or if it was specific to that parcel.
I believe the planning commission approved the subdivision pending the rezone request being approved.
All right, any further questions? All right, thank you, sir. All right,
Would you mind signing
anyone
in
else
for the public
wish
record?
to speak in favor or against this item? Please come forward. Okay. Seeing no one, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And at this time, we will be ready for the first reading. Mr. Kendrick?
Yes, sir. It's an ordinance to further amend the zoning ordinance and the zoning map for the city of Homewood. Whereas the planning commission has made a favorable recommendation that the property described attached as Exhibit A, shall be rezoned from its current zoning classification I-2 Industrial District to the proposed C1 Office Building District of the Homewood zoning ordinance. Whereas the council has determined the time and place for the public hearing to be June 8, 2020 at 6 o'clock p.m. Now therefore be it ordained by the city council as follows, that the property described herein, 720 Shadecrest Parkway, that parcel described in Exhibit A, being the same is hereby taken from the City of Homewood I-2 zoning district and rezoned to City C1 Office Building District. Whereas after the time of the enactment of this ordinance, the uses permitted by the Homewood zoning ordinance for applicable to zone C1 would be control the uses of the property described herein. Section 3, that June 8th at 6 o'clock p.m. is the time and place set for the public hearing, at which time all persons having a desire, all interested parties may appear and be heard. Section 4, that the city clerk is given notice of the public hearing as required by law. Section 5, that any part or provision of the ordinance declared to be unconstitutional, all other parts of provision remain in full force and effect. Section 6, this ordinance shall become effective immediately upon its passage, approval by the mayor is otherwise becoming law.
Thank you, sir. So with the first reading complete, I will now entertain a motion for unanimous consent.
So moved.
By Mr. Wyatt,
Second.
second by Mr. Hardin, and roll call vote, Melody.
Mr. Gwaltney?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Thames?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Higginbotham?
Yes.
Mr. Wolverton?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Wyatt?
Yes.
Mrs. Andress?
Yes.
Mr. Hardin?
Yes.
And Mr. Wright?
Yes. So unanimous consent is approved, and now we'll entertain action on the item itself with a motion for approval
I'll move to approve.
by Ms. Andress.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hardin, and roll call vote again, Ms. Melody.
Mr. Gwaltney?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Thames?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Higginbotham?
Yes.
Mr. Wolverton?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Wyatt?
Yes.
Mrs. Andress?
Yes.
Mr. Hardin?
Yes.
And Mr. Wright?
Yes, and so that is a favorable 11-0 vote. Ordinance 2775. All right, thank you, sir. So that will stand as approved. Next item, 140520, which is a request for consideration of taking over cost of existing street light next to the intersection of Crest Avenue and Columbiana Trail. This coming to us from our mayor, and I will begin with a report from finance on this item. Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. The Finance Committee met on June the 1st and voted 4-0 to recommending funding an annual amount of $148.41. That's coming out of the 7-cent gas tax. So 4-0 out of Finance.
So 4-0 favorable vote out of finance. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that's going to be a favorable 11-0 vote. Resolution, I'm sorry, 2080, thank you. All right, next item, 190320, which is a request for permission to remove a live tree in the city right-of-way at 140 West Oxmoor Road, coming to us from Paul Ross with Central Paper, and Mr. Pugh, Mr. Cobb. And with this item, we'll begin with a report from Special Issues, Mrs. Smith.
Yes, so the committee met last week and heard from Paul Ross, who is the owner of Central Paper, which is the location right behind where the tree is on the street in front of his business. And initially, he had asked for permission to remove one tree, but Henry Hughes, our city arborist, went out and met with Mr. Ross. There are actually 3 trees in the right-of-way that he deemed not necessarily in good shape and kind of a danger to the street. So we amended that to allow him permission to work in the right-of-way to remove all 3 of the trees, and Mr. Ross assured us that they would be planting additional trees back onto the property, probably not in that same spot because it's not a good spot for trees, because it's next to a road and a drainage ditch. But the vote was 5-0 out of Special Issues to approve allowing the work in the right-of-way. Motion was made by Mr. Higginbotham and seconded by Mr. McCluskey.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. So it's a favorable vote coming out of Special Issues. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Hardin?
I just want to make sure we thank Mr. Ross and the record for spending the money to do that. I mean, he could have said, please let the city go do that, because they should pay for it. It's their right of way, but he's willing to spend the money, his own money, to go do it, and I'm grateful for that from him.
All right, thank you, sir.
And also for the record, he was willing to go ahead and comply and replant to make sure he's in compliance with the tree ordinance as well. So he was very easy to work with and very willing to do what it took to do the right thing. So
wonderful. Kudos to Paul Ross. So thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's 11-0 vote, and that's going to be Resolution 20-81. That gets us to our amended committee referral agenda, and I will entertain a motion for approval of that agenda as amended.
Second.
By Mr. Thames.
Question.
Second by Ms. Andress. And before we vote, I have a question for Mr. Jones.
Okay, so 130620 was on there? Is that
Yes,
right?
it is.
Okay, I just had a question for Mr. Pugh. I was going to go look at it, but I'm confused when you're saying 2 front yards. Can you kind of, so it's just a corner lot and you're just viewing both of those as the front yard? I was trying to just
Yes, sir.
make sure I'm looking at it right when I see it.
Yes, sir, it's a corner lot, and before the 2 front yard rule went into effect, it would have effectively been their backyard. It was already fenced in. So they would like to request to be able to basically replace the fence that's there.
Okay, thank you. I just would, thank you for that. Thank you, Mr.
All right,
President.
thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval of the committee referral agenda as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that amended agenda is approved. That gets us to other new business, and 090620, which is a request to set a public hearing to consider declaring the property located at 1117 Hardwick Lane a public nuisance due to violation of ordinances 1910 and 1750. We're going to set that for public hearing on June 22nd without objection. And unfortunately, I must say that 1117 Hardwick Lane respectfully looks like one I've seen before.
can I ask a clarifying
Yes, Mr.
question?
Wolverton?
Is there a reason why we have to put it back on the agenda?
Well, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We cut the grass last time, we voted that.
Okay, so this is just pertaining to that. I'm sorry. I understand.
I was asked to put it on from our code for our sanitation.
Gotcha. It's for, yeah, I misheard. It's overgrowth.
I'll move it forward. This house will be removed on July 6th. After we got the court to give us permission to do that. So the removal of the house will certainly disturb the lot. So we might cut the grass before, but it would be severely,
It's going to be like grass like that.
yeah, you know, so much grass on the left.
So the hearing is
Is,
too much before that.
yeah, public hearing for June 22nd. All right, thank you. Any further questions about that? All right, so we'll set that for June 22nd. Next item, 100620, request to authorize the mayor to sign a municipal election service agreement with Jefferson County for the 2020 municipal election, coming to us from our city clerk and our city attorney, Mr. Kendrick. And Mr. Kendrick, I don't know if there's any brief explanation for this.
We have to obtain our voting machines for the election from Jefferson County. This just authorizes the mayor and the city clerk to negotiate the contract. Essentially, they charge the same to every city in the county, so there's no negotiation. With the contract, this authorizes them to move forward with obtaining the necessary election equipment to hold the election on August 25th.
All right, thank you, sir. I'll entertain motion for approval by Mr. Wolverton. I'm going to do it by Mr. Higginbotham, and a second by Mr. McCluskey. You guys are all doing too fast. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
So you said it's Higginbotham McCluskey?
Yes, Higginbotham and McCluskey. Next item is 110620, request for consideration of approval of vouchers for period of May 19, 2020 through June 8, 2020. And I believe we have a new member of our council that has been indoctrinating. Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I have volunteered to take the run last time because it was one of the shortest runs we've ever had. And then yielded to Mr. Hardin, who dealt with one of the longest runs that we've ever had. But Mr. Burgett was hopefully helpful to you, Mr. Hardin. But thank you for your service and the amount of time you spent.
I stood up for you and told him he did you dirty.
Well, I appreciate that.
So I'll yield to you.
Mr. Jones, your honesty is duly noted.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Hardin.
Yes, I did spend several hours Friday and Sunday up here trying to put it all together, and it certainly, you learn a whole lot about the accounting of a city. But I did review them, and I am recommending we approve the voucher for the period of May 19th through June 8th.
All right, thank you, sir. For approval from Mr. Hardin, and a second from Mr. Thames. And Mr. Hardin, remember, the important thing is that you're having fun doing it. Okay? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the vouchers are approved through June 8th, 2020. That gets us to several things we've got to set. 120620, which is a request to set public hearing and referral to Special Issues Committee for permission to install a front yard fence at 918 Salter Road. I'm going to set that for June 22nd as well, without objection. Trying to make sure I don't set too many things on June 22, but we got two more. I think we're going to go for it. So next we have 130620, which is a request to set a public hearing and referral to the Special Issues Committee for consideration of a variance to a 15-foot setback requirement for fence in the second front yard at 1114 Columbiana Road. Again, we'll set that for public hearing for June 22nd without objection. And next item, 140620, which is a request to set a public hearing and referral to the Special Issues Committee for consideration of a variance to the sign ordinance at 136 Green Springs Highway, coming to us from Sarah Peters and Greg Cobb. And we'll set that for public hearing on June 22nd, too, without objection. Last item, 150620, request for consideration of an ABC retail beer, retail table wine license for Dimitri's Barbecue, Inc., doing business as Dimitri's Barbecue. That's coming to us from Melody Salter and our city clerk. And I think I'll turn over to public safety. I understand we got one, but we need another letter.
That is correct. The police background check is fine, so I would move to having no objection to pending the report from the fire department.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion from Mr. McCluskey pending approval from fire, and a second from Mr. Wolverton. Mr. Thames.
Just out of curiosity, did this business changing hands, or how?
No, they have not sold beer and wine before.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
So, and they're doing a remodel too, so, but, yes.
Okay, you're right, they've never sold alcohol. Good.
All right, so we have a motion and a second for approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that stands approved. And I think we're here for ready for announcements. And we'll begin. And Mr. Mayor, we see you on our monitor. So, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Comments, just to be brief, but I just wanted to send a thank you out to our police department for the great job they've done this past week. Our fire department who have assisted them, and for the council for supporting them on this. So good week for the city of Homewood.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that. And all right, so I'm going to try to keep up with my wards here, y'all, all over the place. Ward 1, Mr. Gwaltney.
Mr. Counselor Jones, I assume 5 p.m. How long do you need?
We're going to need, Mr. Burgett, he's not here. I think we're going to need 45 minutes.
Yeah, we got
Yeah,
a lot to talk
yeah,
about.
45 minutes.
All right, I will set Public Works for 15 minutes at 5:45. And I would just echo the mayor's accolades to police and fire for making it, as always, seem seamless in Homewood. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gwaltney. Mr. Thames?
I'm not going to set P&D and no announcements.
All right, thank you, sir. Ward 2, Mr. Higginbotham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have anything to offer tonight, so thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Wolverton?
Just primarily want to thank Parks and Rec for continuing to put on summer camp this summer. I know that they've gone through painstaking decisions and changes of decisions over and over again. And I'm, personally thankful that they were able to do that. I know there are other municipalities that aren't running a similar program and aren't offering anything. So I appreciate their willingness to continue to adapt to the current environment. And secondly, also similarly with the pool situation and just the changes there, I know Rusty and Berkeley and Jacob have been very on top of keeping track of everything that's changing in terms of numbers and what's allowed, and trying to best accommodate people during a difficult situation. So thank you guys.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. McCluskey.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Gwaltney, did you say 6 o'clock for 15 minutes?
5:45.
Oh, you're 5:45. Okay, so I need to do 6 o'clock for public safety, and I'll only need 15 minutes, Ms. Smith. And I will also echo the thanks for police and fire. Last week was hectic beyond belief. Sorry I could not make the meeting on Thursday, but as always, they do a great job for us, and we're greatly appreciative of it, as well are the citizens. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCluskey. And Mr. Jones?
Finance at 5, and I was able to read your statement, Mr. McCluskey, so we got that into the record.
Thank you, sir.
So, no problem. But I wanted to really thank the council. I really appreciate all of you. I think it's great that we don't always agree on everything, and yet we still, I think, respect each other for your opinions on everything. And I appreciate you, Mr. Wright, for indulging me. It was a tough week, obviously. As you know, I'm not for curfews, but they passed, and, I had to tell my children they had to be home, or, somebody's going to get them. And so I did that, and
I just want you to know we had an officer watching you.
yeah, I know. They were watching all the cars exiting Oxford Circle. But anyway, I do appreciate everything that the police and fire have done, and thank you for Berkeley, because, I have been looking at all the COVID numbers, and the good news is, no one under 24 has died in Alabama due to COVID. So the risk is very, very low for young people, and I'm glad that they have a vehicle that they can at least come to camp. And I know they're going to be making a lot of sacrifices for safety, but at least to have somewhere to go, because all the other camps have been canceled. And it's really sad to have to explain that, but it is what it is, and I appreciate him being able to do that, and I appreciate all of you. So that's all I had tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. And Ms. Smith.
I'll set special issues for 6:15, and we'll probably be there for a little while because it looks like we have a bunch of issues. Also just very thankful for everything that our police officers and our fire department and our Parks and Recs team. My son is actually working as a lifeguard along with Melody's daughters and several others, and I believe Mr. Hardin's son as well. And your son's at the park camp. I saw him today. And it was really good. I actually went and made an appointment to walk on the track inside the rec center today, which was fantastic. And I was the only person there. And I saw the camp kids, and you could tell the kids, even though they were inside, you could tell that they were just glad to be out of their houses. And I'm sure their parents were too. So I just appreciate that there have been so many efforts made to accommodate people as best we can. And I try to explain to everybody, we've got to do these things because it's keeping everybody safe, and we all just need to kind of take a breath and be excited that we have the pool available to us, even if it's hard to get a spot there, apparently. But I'm very thankful for all the hard work that our city employees are doing for us.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Wyatt.
I would just echo what's been said about the city employees, and a particular shout out to the police department. I said this the other day, but I'll say it again. I was at the rally that was in Central Park along with Mr. McCluskey and Mr. Thames, and the participants in that rally were very respectful and peaceful, and had a good event. And I also appreciate that what the police did to work with them and to make sure that the event stayed safe. So I know they had a busy week, and I appreciate everything that they did to work with those people and to keep us safe.
Thank you, sir. And Ms. Andress.
I just want to say I feel every day like we were just getting a little bit closer to normal. I've spent some time on 18th Street last week, and just, it's looked fabulous and bustling. And my son is coaching at the tennis courts for Homewood Tennis. That starts next week, and it's been a tough few months. Tough last few weeks, but I love this community and love all of you guys and our employees in the city, and also our litter getter. I've run by that several times and peeked down the creek just to see how that was doing. So if you find your way down Salter Broadway, take a look at that. So anyway, it makes me love Homewood, and anyway, that's all I got.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Andress. Mr. Hardin.
Being almost the last guy other than President Wright, it's hard to come up with something different. I'm grateful for my ward mate and us having, realizing our flags weren't out for Memorial Day. That was a lot of fun, and I appreciate that she thought of it, because it certainly didn't occur to me. And Mr. Thames and I think Mr. Wyatt went out and bought flags. And I know we're reimbursing them because I've seen that. But also, the country is beating up all the police these days, and we've got such a great fire team and police team here in Homewood, and I'm just grateful for them. As everybody has said, they don't get paid much, and they work really hard in tough situations. So I just want, for the record, to be stated that I appreciate them.
Thank you, Mr. Hardin. Since I am last, I'm just going to echo what you said, and thank you all for really taking that time to get those flags up. That was helpful, noticeable, and really a big deal. So thank you all for that. And I really do want to just echo what I think everyone said, but about our fire and our public safety, particularly our police, over these past week, and to know what they've all been through, and late nights, a lot of uncertainty, which we all sort of endured ourselves with our curfew meetings. I think we had just 2 of them. Seemed like we had about 6 of them, but it's just 2 of them. And just for the way our police department has been prepared for this, and still prepared for this as we go through what we all hope and believe will be our last night of curfew tonight. And just a big kudos, and really a lot of pride in having them by our side and helping our city, and particularly Chief Ross and some of his the captains as well. Also, I just want to take a second and, gosh, if you're running for, it sounds like an election comment, but it's not, but for our curfew, I really just want to thank our public. Ladies and gentlemen, have we seen and noticed how they complied? I mean, it was, it's not easy, and it's certainly not easy for those businesses, but with regard to the public, and I really appreciate them taking the necessary precautions over these last several difficult days, and it was very much noticed, and I think very much helpful for our police to help with making sure all our city was tight and secure. So with that, thank you for the public, if you can get any more trite than that, but I really do say that sincerely in our community to recognize the importance of that curfew. So, all right, with that comment, thank you all. We are adjourned. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Jones. Too late now. They're running the music. We're adjourned. Thank you.